Right, right. Uh, Quickly, since you're from Finland, what happened what happened with Soviet Union and Finland, and also after the Soviet Union was dissolved?
Well, after the Second World War, Second World War was 2 wars, of course. 3 wars, actually. Can be considered 3 wars in Finland. We had firstly Winter War with the Soviet Union, which was in 1939 and 40. Then a continuation war, which is the when Finland was allied with Germany and part of the coalition that attacked the Soviet Union, and then Lapland War, which was the short period when Finland fought with Germany, uh, its former ally. But after these 3 wars, Finland lost great many of its territory. It had to pay war reparation sort of money for, which of course was, well, of course, in a way Finland was sort of invader during the continuation war, but it was sort of Soviet Union had attacked first during the Winter War, so it was, well, many Finns didn't think it simply fair that we had to pay these war preparations, but we paid, and we had then a more sort of friendlier foreign policy with towards Soviet Union. We didn't become a satellite like East Germany or Poland, but Soviet Union dictated a lot of Finnish foreign policy, and our presidents like to go to visit Moscow, and in all the rhetoric there was a lot of talk about trust and good relations and trade increase and the like. And well, I think Finland achieved a lot during those Cold War years. It wasn't exactly. It lost some space for movement, room for movement in its foreign policy, but it remains sort of a Nordic democratic country.
But how much was taken from Finland after the Second World War?
I think it's maybe 12% of territory.
Obviously, the eastern regions of Finland.
Yeah, like there's the Karelian Isthmus, which is a region near the St. Petersburg. More of Karelia up north. There was Finland had a sort of territory at the shore of the Arctic Ocean. Petsamo region, that too was lost.
And were those returned after the fall of the Soviet Union in 91?
None were returned, so they remain part of Russian Federation.
And why wasn't there a change in, like, after the war? It would seem natural to me that when Russia or when Soviet Union like were dissolved, that those would be taken back since everything was disorganized.
Well, the new Finnish government after the end of the Cold War thought what it wanted to retain good relations also with New Russia, and it maybe thought it wise not to make sort of territorial demands. And of course, Russia firmly refused to return these territories. Maybe not because it was like it wouldn't have been needed those territories exactly, but it was afraid of other territorial demands, like Japan demands the Kuril Islands in the Pacific, for example. So if you give one country back this territory, then maybe there would be more demands from other countries. Or maybe Germany demands back Kaliningrad, for example, and things like that.
Yeah, and maybe there was some shame also. Like there was some heavy propaganda after the Second World War that the Axis powers, including Finland, were like evil or wrongdoers, and so it would make sense to me not to want to dig into that again, since after all it was a long time that passed from fall of Soviet Union and end of Second World War.
Yeah, but in Finland, uh, our sort of self-understanding of history is that we were very much forced to be for a brief period of time, for a few years, to be allied with the Nazi Germany. It wasn't like we had at that point two options, like Nazi Germany and Soviet Union, and we had been in a war with little over a year ago with Soviet Union, so it wasn't like we would have chosen that side. So
And also Nazi Germany didn't exactly want to occupy Finland.
yeah,
In this case, it was more to support Finland's cause. So it was more independence for Finland. So it's a clear
yeah,
choice.
yeah, certainly, and
Yeah.
it was like, well, it was.
It was a defensive war after all. It was not like Finland was the perpetrator in this situation.
Yeah, well, Winter War was very much a defensive war, but it is sort of history is complicated, and of course it has to be said that one of the we were exactly didn't want to a new war with the Soviet Union, but when it did start, there was sort of an ideology of greater Finland, sort of Finland that not only includes the territories we lost, but also some territories taken, Eastern Karelia, for example, from the Soviet Union. So in a sense, it was for some Finns war conquest also. So we. I don't like to make the sort of case that we were a sort of evil fascists that Soviet Union portrayed us, but also we were not completely innocent.
Oh,
So I think you'll have to see the shades of grey in history, sort of.
yeah, I think that definitely adds credibility to people who do that instead
Mm,
of trying to make one case or the other.
yeah,
Yeah. Okay, so that was Finland. Obviously, a lot more to go into that, and there's some we talked before the podcast, like some legendary story of the Finnish sniper,
yeah,
the White Death, and you know his real name, which was
yeah. Simo Häyhä.
yeah. I don't know how many hundreds of confirmed kills he had, but
I think
certainly,
something like 500, if I'm not mistaken.
yeah. That this guy can have a whole podcast episode for himself,
Mm.
maybe. But then there's also I saw a funny story the other day on YouTube about a certain Aimu Koivunen. If you've heard about him,
No, maybe I haven't.
it's a funny video. I'll link to it in the video in the on the podcast. But basically, there were some Finnish winter war with the Soviets, and they
Yeah.
were very exhausted and almost no resources and hadn't eaten for a long time and
Yeah,
no ammunition. And so they were escaping and they were being hunted
yeah.
by Russian soldiers only a couple of 100 meters away,
Mm.
like in the woods. And then he was so tired that he was like falling asleep while he
Yeah.
was skiing away from them.
Yeah.
And so the only solution that he saw was that he had some methamphetamine in his pocket,
Yeah.
and he had never taken it before. I don't know if they got it from the Germans, the methamphetamine, because that was common with the Wehrmacht.
Yeah.
But so, anyways, he took this methamphetamine. Not only did he take one, but he emptied the whole bottle.
Oh yeah.
And it's a crazy story, but he survived. Um, although he was out for a week apparently
Yeah.
in the woods by himself, hallucinating
Hmm.
like that the Russians were finding him, and he was seeing rabbits, and he was having illusions of houses, and at the end he was found actually by the Finnish
Yeah.
military. Yeah, it's a cool story.
Yeah,
But
I've heard some of the sort of use of these narcotics they were used in Finnish army. Yeah.
yeah,
Mm,
yeah. From a biological perspective, it's also very interesting. Like
mm,
I've been studying medicine now for a
mm.
year. Like so it must have been his brain that was exhausted and not his muscles.
Yeah.
But I'm not entirely sure. Okay, so that's Finland, and Russia retained some of the territories,
Yeah.
and well, obviously they lost their these semi-independent countries like Eastern Germany and Hungary,
Yeah.
Romania.
Yeah, all these satellite nations, and of course, when Soviet Union dissolves, collapses, of course, all these other former Soviet republics. How many? There were like all the Baltic states, Ukraine, Belarus, uh, uh, states on the Caucasus, and the Central Asian states. So a
Mm,
vast territory is sort of lost. And
yeah. What about in Asia and perhaps in the Middle East and things like this?
well, I think Soviet Union loses some influence, of course, back there. I think, but it isn't as major as like maybe the loss of these Soviet republics, for example. I think well, Soviet Union had and Russia still has, for example, a military base in Syria, for example. I think Soviet Union maybe had a military base in Vietnam, in Cuba also. So, but I think in other parts of the world, it wasn't like it had such a big network of military bases outside its territory, like or outside the territory of its satellites, like the United States United States had and still has.
I hope you enjoyed that clip of the HH podcast. If you want to see another clip, click here down to your left. And if you want to see the whole unedited episode, click down here to your right. And last but not least, if you want to subscribe, you can do so here in the middle. Thank you.